Down here on the back shoreline, the Matagorda shoreline here, up in Mesquite Bay, all this area down in here. We spend a lot of time still fishing around reefs, still locating fish in and around that. But that trout bite is really starting to die off. You start to get to that 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock time range, and the trout bite dies pretty quickly. Again, we're temperatures are starting to creep. Ambient temperatures are getting into the low to mid 90s, and that just brings our water temps up as well. We're starting our days out now upper 80s, and we're creeping into the 90s if you're fishing into the afternoons. We're trying to be done and getting off the water by 1, 2 o'clock at the absolute latest. That time frame there, it's starting. The water temps just get really, really warm. Fish become a little bit more lethargic and not very responsive to baits and stuff. So that bite frame's really it's really small, especially if you're targeting trout. So we're trying to be on the water or in the area that we want to fish by 6:30ish, and then work that hard for the next 3 hours. Put us in that 9:30, 10 o'clock time range. But that's been working for us. We finally got some water back into our system, which is very helpful, especially with the water temps being what they are. So working lots of shorelines, fishing anywhere from thigh to waist deep water. The trout have been in around the shell again, like I said, but we're finding few that are up here on the shorelines as well. Some of these coves have been pretty good back here in Bray. You got the back lakes back in there. You got to remember, don't forget, they got the little road built back up, so you can't get all the way back in Little Brunt, at least not that way. You have to go all the way back around through Ayers and get in that way. Little back lake that's in here. Then we just spent time out on the shorelines out here fishing the little shell bars that are out here off of this point, the little shell reefs that are scattered out this way. Then this whole back shoreline in Mesquite, all the way up here into Ayers. You go like into Ayers Dugout. This reef that's right out here in the middle of Mesquite has been pretty good. In a lot of different size trout. We're catching the dinkers that are in there. That's at 10 to 14 range, but we're catching some that are in the 18 to 19 inch range too. So the fish are there. Then of course we're working across these areas here again, over shell, fishing the shorelines, working all these types of areas in and around that right there, around fish camp. All these little fingers that pop out in here, we're finding fish in that. Get through the Ayers Dugout and get on the backside here into Ayers itself. Work the shoreline back in here. And that's where we found our fish, primarily trout early, redfish a little later in the mornings. And that's going to kind of be the continuing theme unless there's something else that you're particularly trying to target. That's the two things that we are specifically targeting right now is trout early, redfish late. And that's been our tactic. Again, with the excess water that has come back, and again, it's not like a big bull tide that would come in here, but there's plenty of water that's opened some areas up for us that's been very helpful. With that, winds have been great. Sunday was a spectacular day out on the water. Wind kind of died off a little less than what I kind of would like, but if you get it in that 8 to 12 range, that's perfect. But we had lots of, now unless you're fishing late afternoon and then you're contending with some 15 to 20s. That's kind of what is going on right now in August. We're roughly halfway through this month. It's just flying by. But these are areas that you're going to want to continue to fish through the month of August. Really focus on your shell in and around those areas like that. Really hard packed sand and grass, and you'll locate some fish. We're in our transition moon. Big moon was pretty good as far as fishing around that, but now we're in the transition moons this week, moving toward a new moon. That's probably, I'd say, 5 to 6 days out, maybe 7 days out before we get to that new moon. And primarily we've been throwing the smaller size baits, the burner shad in the down south, mirror lure, Little Johns, Little John XLs, the knock and tail, and that was our main baits. We sprinkled in a little bit of top water in there and had a little bit of success with it, but not great success. The smaller baits were doing it for us, in the down south in both the burner shad and the original size, the watermelon red, the big papa, the twisted tea, the white ice, and bone diamond. All were pretty successful, pretty productive for the past week. in and around that. And then the Little Johns, again, the Truth, watermelon red in those as well, in both the Little John and the XL. The main thing that we threw in the knock and tail that we were really kind of see what was going on with those, let's say, and it was the heavy metal and the greenback mainly that we did with that, because we had a lot of clean water since our winds really weren't kicking up tremendous and just dirtying everything up and having high winds. We found a lot of spots that were pretty clean, 1.5 2 foot down, so that boded well for us. So we try to stick to something that was not necessarily completely translucent, but had a lot of flash, noise. That's the great thing about the knock and tails. It's got the little beads in the tail that just kind of add to that bait that makes it pretty productive. And in of course, the Little Johns, a lot of movement, a lot of darting action. We've got a lot of reactionary strikes with those. And then sticking with our, our down south mainly, just in the paddle tails, the small stuff, in both the original and the burner shad size, did pretty well for us in most of those flavors. So one of them, if not all of them, we just kind of work different ones depending on how many people are on the boat that any particular day. So if you got more people that you can throw different things out there, then it does pretty well for you as far as locate and find your fish pretty quickly. Like I say, trout have been good early in and around the shell beds, working around that and the hard pack stuff. So that's been pretty good for us. So tides have been up, which has been great. Weather conditions are good. It looks like potentially we have a little bit of rain that may be coming in this upcoming week, which we could desperately use. But until it actually happens, we won't worry ourselves too much about that for now. Out here on the point of Mud Island, you got the little area out here, and you got the little drop-offs that there. You got a lot of fingers that are in there too, man. So if you haven't waded this, once you get here right off the point and you start working around the island itself, you got little fingers that pop out there and come back, and you got guts in between those. We've been finding a lot of trout here off the edge of that. Again, hard packed sand, a lot of grass that's in there. You've got those edges, the fingers that are on that. Fish have been holding around that. And then you got a little bit deeper drop off if you come back around, working on the front half of Mud Island here. You got some deeper little gullies that are in that area there. And we found that out pretty quick when we got that more water that came back into our system. I guess it's about midweek, Wednesday-ish, somewhere along there. We've noticed the tides were like, oh, okay, we got some more water in here. So we go to wade some of these. So you get chest deep, maybe neck deep, trying to get through some of those deeper guts until you get back to that outer bar that's out there. That's a spectacular bar that's right there on the backside, or should I say between the oyster farm and the island itself. There's a nice little bar that's on that outside edge. It's got a lot of good grass on it. You got some good edges that are on it. You got patches that are there. And some fish early have been holding on that. Now, again, once you get around that 9 to 10 o'clock time frame, that bite is like, whoop, it cuts off for trout. You may continue to scratch them out here and there, but it's not like it is early. So if that's what you really want to target, I would suggest you try to be in whatever area that you want to fish for that particular morning, be there by the time that sun's popping up. So, sunrise is around 6:50-ish, 6:55, somewhere give or take in that time frame. So if you can safely navigate to where you want to be, if you can get into those areas like that by 6:15, 6:20, you're going to give yourself an opportunity. Like I say, we're fishing the major overs right now. If you wanted to be on the water later and try to fish the minor setting later, that's very much could, but that water temp begins to creep up there, so you really need to find some a little bit deeper water if that's what you want to do. But that said, we've been just working the outer edge, these guts that are out here as you come down the front side of Mud Island, working all this hard packed sand. There's a little scattered shell here and there in it, a little bit of grass that's here and there in it, and that's really what we're trying to really focus on and be on top of. And this whole scenario sets you up all the way down to the point, all the way down to toward the ranch house and in Blind Pass. You can get on that now on the ranch house shoreline back here, working there in front of the runway, that way all the way down to the bulkhead, and then come back around the other side and work the back side of the bulkhead like you're going up toward Allen's Bight. All this area in here, great grass that's in there. Again, more hard packed sand, and we've located trout in here. We've located redfish up and down the shoreline, working all this. It's been sporadic. It hadn't been great numbers, but it's been sporadic, and you can find them. They are there. Like I say, we're trying to, again, incorporate as much of our major or minor that we can get into our morning as we transition out of that. We're in the transition days and then trying to get to the new moon phase. So far, so good weather-wise. We don't have any spinners that are out there in the Gulf, which is to hope it'll stay that way for the rest of August and September. But your tactics should be fishing the hard packed, fishing the shell, those types of areas. Your redfish really not too concerned about it one way or another. They're going to be shoreline. They're going to be over shell. They're going to be around that kind of stuff. They'll be over some softer stuff mud-wise. Like if you get back into Allens and back in this area, back in here, you got a little bit of shell that's off of this point, and you got back lakes that come back in and around there, and you can work all this back this way to the point there in Allens. And it's all produced fish at different times of the day. So that's a pretty big area for you to cover. Like I say, once you start wading it, you next thing you know, you're 2-3 hours into it, so your morning's just about gone, or at least the trout bite morning's gone anyway. Then just go look for your redfish, and that's primarily where we've been locating. Again, the same flavors in the down south, both the burner shad and the original size in the twisted tea, white ice, bone diamond, watermelon red, all those particular flavors. Easy Money, I think, is another one that's been in there. It's a little bit lighter, greenish, goldish, tan color that it's done pretty good for us. And then, of course, the Knock and Tail in both the heavy metal and the greenback has done good. Miraloo Little Johns in both the XL. The Truth, mainly. Watermelon Red, a little bit, but we've thrown a lot of the Truth. And some of the white ice in that as well has done pretty good for us. So, did not throw any topwaters back in these areas or across the front. That's primarily plastics. Again, with the amount of shrimping that's going on, it would be a good idea to get you the Marker 54 jerk shrimp. And if you want to fish those back, under popping cork, back in some of these potholes and stuff, you can find some redfish with them. Or we just kind of bouncing them off the shell bars and across the grass and the hard pack bottom, and had decent success with those as well. So if you don't have those in your box, get you some and put in there, and just add one more little weapon to your arsenal. You're off a rattlesnake. Again, hard pack sand. You got shell that's in here. You've got deeper water access out here on the edges of that. You come all the way out here where that little duck blind is, out there on the end of that. You've got some nice little wading area out there. You got a lot of good grass that's in there, and that goes out pretty far. You can work all this area pretty well, and with little cut throughs in here. The backside of where Redfish Lodge used to sit, right here on that shoreline, that's been pretty good. A little bit more mushy on this side of it, as opposed to what it is out here on the point on the rattlesnake. It's much more hard packed that's out there, but we found fish in both locations. And once that kind of died off a little bit, got back over on the other point here. There's one that has deeper edge, so if you can get right on it, and with the winds, with the way they've been, it's been pretty easy to fish, so you hadn't had to worry about it too terribly much, so it's set up pretty well. You got that deep water that's right there. So if you want to try to continue your trout bite, get over here on this shoreline here and work that, 5 to 6 to 7 foot of water and see if those fish have receded off into that. So if that's what you're going to fish and how you're going to fish, you may want to put you a 3/16 or 1/8 ounce jig head on there, just to allow that bait to swim just a little bit easier in that deeper water, and get down in there and see if you can't work it and just kind of bounce it off that bottom, bring it up that face of that little drop, see if those fish are hanging on that. We've pulled a few redfish out here on the shoreline, nothing deep. They've all been up pretty shallow, which is normal for redfish. You're catching them in that thigh to waist deep water. Around the little island here, and you got a little cut through that goes into this backside. Now this little flat over here is kind of mushy, but we stayed to the outside, fishing this, again, the deeper edge, more hard packed stuff, and how all that sets up. And then get back down in here on this west shoreline, and just work the deeper edge that's off of that. Say early in the week, with the water levels being where they were until they finally came back toward the midweek, later in the week, then we started fishing a little bit deeper later in the day. And of course, you can come all the way down here to the point and back toward 188 shoreline where that sand ramp is. It's over there. And just work this big old flat that's out here. Well, that's where we found some redfish that were kind of cruising around out there. Nothing, not any great numbers, but just kind of one here, one there. So it was good as far from that standpoint. But again, you know, your target frame, if you're going to target your trout, you better get to them early, because after 10 o'clock, they're going to be extremely hard for them to get to want to eat anything unless you're going to really fish deep. Like back up there in Port Bay off that deeper edge, you can probably find them deeper in that 5 to 7 foot of water there, so it's much more comfortable for them. Redfish is your main targets. You want to stay up shallow, you know, nothing really deeper than belly deep water. And those fish are kind of crawling around in those types of areas like that, working. Plenty of bait still in our system. Like I say, we're halfway through August. This weather pattern looks like that's going to be the way it's going to be here for at least another week anyway, and hopefully we'll get some rain next week, and that'll change things a little bit, but not drastically. But it will help for our estuaries for sure as we head into the fall of the year. So we're still a few months away from that, or a couple of months away from that, and the way that the fishing has been, it's been pretty consistent for the most part, and you just have to adjust for the heat and the water temps in fishing those types of areas, or set yourself up to where you've got shallow stuff early and you got some deeper water access to you later in the morning time frame. So that's been our tactics. That's what we've stuck to, and that's been pretty productive to us for the most part. Same flavors and what I mentioned, same areas just like this, all in the down south of Miraluders, the same flavors that I mentioned earlier. That's all working in these waters as well. So so when you work these, just pay attention to what's going on, because the bite's been pretty subtle for us for the most part. It hadn't been just knock it out of the park good, hard hitting. But I suspect that will change to some degree over the next 2 to 3 weeks. But again, keep working your majors and minors if you get a time frame to be out there this upcoming week, and the biggest thing is to be safe and have fun.